big earthquake out of Vanuatu, which is an island chain off the eastern coast of Australia. And this one took me by surprise. It also did not take me by surprise, but a magnitude 7.3, which is by far the strongest earthquake we've had in a long time. We had a magnitude 7 off the coast of California just within the past couple weeks. That was strong. This is stronger. This is a subduction zone earthquake. The earthquake off California is a strike slip fault to San Andreas. Not really possible to generate tsunami off of that. Kind of, not really with the strike slip fault. It goes like this. Subduction zone, that's how you get big tsunamis. And this trench here, the New Hebrides subduction zone, is home in two really powerful earthquakes. Magnitude 8 and greater has that historic record. And so you have the potential for big earthquakes here and big tsunamis. And we got a big earthquake today with a magnitude 7.3. A tsunami threat has been issued. So there are warnings that have gone out specifically for Vanuatu. We can zoom in here. You can imagine that the tsunami threat would be, of course, biggest for these islands happening right there. I mean, these people must have gotten a shake. And so this is just happening. I mean, I basically just uploaded a video and then I checked my Shake app and it said 10 minutes ago. I was like, what the heck? So we really don't know that much. I'm reporting on this for you live. And we're going to go through and just kind of monitor the situation live together. And that when we're kind of wrapped up, we'll do a question and answer. So stick around all the way to the end to ask some questions. And we're going to look at some of the trends that's been occurring with earthquakes, because there are some kind of underlying factors to this that I've identified and researched into. And I also noticed that this earthquake also had pre-earthquake signals in the Schumann resonances. They're very faint, not clear like we had for the magnitude 7 earthquake with California 5 days prior, but they still appear. So a release of earth energy before this earthquake occurred, which is quite notable. So there's just been a tremendous amount of earth energies at this moment in time. Mother Earth is waking up, magnitude 7.3. And you'll notice here, Australia very likely has a tsunami threat that's been issued. We can go to our US tsunami warning. This is for the United States in particular. And so they have different regions set here, all of them from that Vanuatu quake. So like America, Samoa, Hawaii, West Coast of the United States. I clicked the Hawaii one. It says, as of right now, there's no threat, but this is so new that there's still, this information's coming in. And so big threat warning there, but whether this will actually turn into tsunami that sweeps across the Pacific, as of right now, unknown. Probably less likely, but you cannot rule it out. 7.3 is big. It's not a magnitude 8. It's not a magnitude 9. But still, that's once you get to magnitude 7, you're in big earthquake territory. We just had a high magnitude 6 in South America. So tons of earthquakes over the past month or so. We're going to check out the historic seismicity. But this is the epicenter right there. The depth was 57 kilometers, at least last time I checked. These things update, they're dynamic as it goes. And you see the subduction zone here. And so you have the Australian plate moving like this. This is the plate motion. You have the subduction zone, which gives you the most powerful earthquakes. And then you have the New Hebrides plate right there. It's like a microplate that's part of the Pacific plate. This whole kind of junction has a bunch of microplates. This is just slightly bigger than a microplate, but overall part of the Pacific plate. The two of them smash up together there and you get these big earthquakes. So magnitude 7.3. We can go to our latest earthquakes, USGS over here, to check this out. We'll refresh this to see if there's been an update. Originally it was reported as a 7.4, downgraded just 0.1 magnitude. That's common when an earthquake first happens. The magnitude estimate is not going to be exactly accurate. Also, sometimes they'll take that shake data and apply it to another earthquake that occurred at a similar time. So when I checked my phone, it also said magnitude 6.6 in New Zealand, Christchurch. I was like, holy cow, double earthquake. Turns out that was the same earthquake. It just got pegged onto something that occurred near Christchurch. We see that one right here actually, but as it's only a magnitude 4.4. So you can have dynamics like this. This was at 1:47 a.m. Universal Time on the 17th. So again, like within an hour, I'm reporting on this. And the depth as of right now, still 57.1 kilometers. Here we have our epicenter map and like our shake map, the contours of this. I'll stand off on this side here. And you can see how the seismic energy preferentially likes to travel and kind of propagate along the islands, the landform, but basically happen in the middle of the ocean. We do have the islands there, but pretty nice radiation uniformly out on both sides of that subduction zone. So just big release of energy. In general, what we're looking at, I don't get the globe here. Let me go back to Google Earth. In general, what we're looking at here is just a really big, like, amplification, I'm not sure is the right word, just a lot of intensity right now that is being released from deeper in the planet. You have the atmosphere, you have the oceans, liquid, right? And then you have the solid Earth. And Earth can store a lot of energy. And there's a lot of research shows that when you have solar maximum, you have solar energy coming in, so long as that's loading into the planet, you don't get that many earthquakes. But then when there's a reprieve of that energy, it kind of pulls back, solar activity dies down. That's when some of this earthquake activity then responds, also volcanic activity. And we are still in solar maximum, but we have been dropping recently in activity as compared to August, for example, and as compared to October. And now we've had a lot of big earthquake activity in the past month, much more than we had during the summer or August, September, October. And so that effect seems to be playing out right now where we get this solar energy loading in. And now that it's kind of abated a bit, it's still there, still active. We may have a geomagnetic storm on the 17th or 18th. We may have a solar storm impact. We're kind of waiting to see. A little uncertainty there. But in general, we haven't been having that much solar activity over the past month. And so we've been having a lot of earthquake activity instead. Things that are static for long periods of time, subtly rupturing, and they are the most powerful of all the different things that occur. I mean, you have, for example, a big storm that sweeps by, a hurricane. Of course, that can be very destructive, but the amount of energy in an earthquake is unrivaled. We can actually kind of do an interesting calculation here. If we do Omni calculator earthquake, we can get the sense of how many bombs this is that basically exploded underground. One of mine, thank you for the super thanks. Yes, here I saw that, immediately got the live stream going, just had to make a thumbnail. A 7.3 earthquake is equivalent to 90 Hiroshima bombs, 67 Nagasaki bombs, and equivalent to 0.02 of the largest nuclear test that's ever been done. That was with the Tsar bomb. So not as powerful as something like a Krakatoa eruption, right? Which is, it's only 0.0067, the strength of that, but still a big release of energy. The way earthquake magnitude scales, that when you go from 7 to an 8, it's 10 times stronger. So there's a big difference between a 7.3 and a 6.3, and there's an even bigger difference between a 7.3 and an 8.3. So as you go up into that 8 range, then things really get wild. Thankfully, this was not a giant quake in the 8 to 9 range, but still a very big quake. We have this, I mean, I'm not sure if this is how up to date this is. They put out some articles right after this occurred. Looks like there's been some shaking here. This is a photo from X Twitter. So yeah, a big big shaker. No tsunami threat to New Zealand, according to the National Emergency Management Agency of New Zealand. Unlikely to pose a threat to New Zealand, but if it was, it would take at least 2 hours to reach the island. We have some quotes right here. If there are aftershocks, the tsunami threat would need to be reassessed. We have our buoy network that will trigger if there's any activity at sea. There's no indication that there will be any land threat. Beach areas are still being assessed for unusual currents. This just happened though. That's the thing. What is normal, which is normally what occurs if there is a wave of water that does come and make its way to New Zealand, it'll cause some unusual currents near New Zealand. But it takes time for these waves to propagate out. So this is really breaking news. That's for New Zealand. I'm not sure if Australia has a threat. Australia, tsunami threat. Let's see what pulls up for that. Here's the joint Australia. Okay, let's hope that this redirect is good. Maybe here. Warnings. Oh God. I'm going to go back. That's an old news article. Maybe we'll be able to find a tsunami warning for Australia. I'm not sure. That website being out of commission didn't really help. But likely because of its location, let's go back to Google Earth here. We see here Vanuatu. And look, I mean, basically the most populated part of Australia is right there to the side. And so if New Zealand has at least 2 hours of lag time, Australia would have 2 hours or maybe even less. And so this is a very dynamic situation. Yeah, this whole area in some aspects is a ticking time bomb. We not only have the massive volcanoes over here with Tonga, but we have this super powerful subduction trench there that's given us multiple magnitude 8s before. So yeah, I mean, wild area energetically, and that energy also propagates out across the globe. I want to show you these pre-earthquake signals because this is really quite interesting. Here we have our space observing system, background vertical electric field data. And so this is a geophysical observatory way up in Tomsk, Russia. And that puts it kind of close to the North Magnetic Pole, the magnetic pole in the northern hemisphere. And there's been weird observations out of this station before. It seems to have an ability to connect and observe unusual Earth energy dynamics, whereas other Schumann stations don't have that privilege. I think it's based on the location of this observatory. And so before the magnitude 7 earthquake in California just recently, we had these very strange Earth energy signals that popped up. I talked about that in multiple videos. We see them show up here as well. They're very faint, so they're not clearly as apparent, but they are there. If you look at this often, you can see how this is bizarre. See that parabola right there? We see this parabola going up, and we also see it ringing. We see the parabola also up there, and we see another one just barely down below. It's very, very faint, but we're looking at a spectrogram showing the vertical electric field amplitude based on these colors. So blue is low amplitude, white is high amplitude, and this is going from 0 to 40 hertz. So this is the background spectrum. 0 cycles per second, which is infinity, to let's say like 5 cycles per second, which would be pretty fast, right? All the way to 40. We have our Schumann resonances here. This is mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. These natural Earth energies that's created from lightning strikes, created from energy hitting the ionosphere, the uppermost part of Earth's atmosphere. Earthquakes create Schumann resonances. Our brains create them, a whole bunch of things. They are natural energies that resonate all across the globe. And disturbances in the Schumann resonances are often picked up before, during, and after large earthquakes. And so we see these parabolas show up right here. Also, I think I'm seeing some right there as well. You'll notice, particularly right here, you have mode 3 propagating across. They are these stable frequencies. So the line is basically straight. But you see this bending there where all of a sudden the frequency increased, or at least the amplitude of these higher frequencies in between modes 3 and 4 increased. And that is the specific frequency range that we see elevate in magnitude before big earthquakes. And so that lines up perfectly as a pre-earthquake signal. Yeah, I mean, it's very faint, but as someone that's been tracking this for a long time, that's undoubtedly what it is. It makes sense because Tomsk, Russia is pretty far away from Vanuatu. But nevertheless, we still are picking up some unusual signals here. This is the current data right there. And so that's got 8 local time. This is UTC +7. So this is more than 24 hours before the earthquake. It also looks like maybe there's another parabola right there. And so we're looking at a pre-earthquake signal about 36 hours before that magnitude 7.3. This is data out of Tomsk, Russia Space Observing System. Pretty wild. Let's update our USGS to see what we got. Any big changes here? It does not look like it yet. Still set the highest magnitude. Let's put newest first. We don't have any we have one aftershock in the area of 5.5. Similar depth, a little shallower at 48.7 kilometers. So not a big aftershock swarm like we've been seeing elsewhere. If I zoom out, you'll see what I mean. I have this set to all earthquakes worldwide. Look at all the earthquakes that are occurring for North America. We've had a continuous sequence of aftershocks with that magnitude 7 that occurred in California. And if I change this to be 30 days significant worldwide, you will see how crazy it has been earthquake-wise. Now we have the new king on top of the castle. This being this magnitude 7.3 from Vanuatu. Here is the magnitude 7 from California. And then right next to it is a magnitude 5.7 Nevada. That was a surprise shaker. A sequence of magnitude 6s in Alaska, 2 6.3s and also a 6.0, I believe. 2 magnitude 6s. It looks like maybe one of them is just outside the range. Yeah. And then also just recently, this was just on the 13th of December, we had this magnitude 6.4 in Chile, right on this subduction zone with the Andes Mountains. So there are times where the highest earthquake we have for a week or 2 or 3 weeks is just a mid-magnitude 5. And you just get a lot of rumbling in the 4s. You don't really get anything significant. But here we can see just how many earthquakes we've had. If I close that out, I mean, we have our lowest one there for this list being the 5.3 aftershock for California, and then going up from there with El Salvador, Nevada, Japan, 6.1 in Japan. That was on the 26th of November, so one of the older ones. We can go and change this from largest magnitude to oldest first. And we get that 6.1 Japan, then we get that magnitude 7 Mendocino, then we get the Alaska earthquake swarm, these two guys. And then is El Salvador, Nevada, Chile, Petrolia, and Vanuatu. It's the most recent. So really things have been heating up. Like this is no joke. People comment sometimes like nothing ever happens. Well, like, pick your head up out of the sand. There's definitely stuff happening. Let's go back and let's dig a little bit more into our tsunami threats because I'm breaking the news here, and so we can go through this and see what is happening right now. We can click for all these. These are different messages that we can just read through. So Hazardous tsunami waves from this Vanuatu earthquake are possible within 300 kilometers of the epicenter along the coast of Vanuatu. So that is one of the earthquake threat warnings that's been issued. A tsunami is a series of waves. The time between wave crests can vary from 5 minutes to an hour, and the hazard may persist for many hours or longer after the initial wave. It can also vary depending on the state of the tide at that time. I want to talk about that as well, folks, because that's some recent research that I've been doing. The next message will be issued in 1 hour or sooner if the situation warrants. So if we have Vanuatu Islands here, that tsunami wave, if it existed, would have already swept out. But the bigger, well, not the bigger question, but the question for the more densely populated areas like Southeast Asia and Australia and New Zealand is, will they have a tsunami wave? This isn't a magnitude 8 or 9. This is magnitude 7.3, still a big earthquake. So let's go back to our tsunami warnings. The tsunami threat exists for parts of the Pacific located closer to the earthquake. Based on all available data, no tsunami threat for Hawaii based on the available data. We have another one here. There is no tsunami danger for the U.S. West Coast, British Columbia, or Alaska at this moment in time. We have another one here. Based on all available data, there is no tsunami threat to American Samoa from the magnitude 7.3 Vanuatu earthquake. Based on all available data, no tsunami threat to Guam, Rota, Tahitian, or Saipan from this earthquake. And this is for, oh, where is this for? Is this for Hawaii? Okay, well, it says, based on all available data, hazardous tsunami waves are forecasted for some coast. Maybe this is for Vanuatu. Tsunami waves are forecasted to be less than 0.3 meters above the tide level for the coast of Fiji, the Kermadec Islands, Kiribati, New Caledonia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, and Wallis and Futuna. Actual amplitudes at the coast may vary from forecast amplitudes due to uncertainties in the forecast and local features. In particular, maximum tsunami amplitudes on atolls and at locations with fringing or barrier reefs will likely be much smaller because they absorb that wave action. For other areas covered by this product, a forecast has not yet been computed. So they're still working on this. But it looks like our tsunami threat right now is greatest for the islands of Vanuatu themselves, and then also some of these surrounding islands here. We can actually measure that radius. They said it was like a 200-kilometer radius that was the most significant. We see that going up to the top and down there. It's about 350 kilometers. So yeah, big earthquake, really big earthquake. And one of the things I've been researching recently, just did a bunch of research on this actually yesterday, was the effect of tides, like ocean tides and earth tides on earthquake occurrence. And so there's a good body of evidence now based on all the historic seismicity that we have in our big catalogs from the USGS and others, that earth and ocean tides create greater stress on faults. And when a fault is at a critical stress threshold, then that can finally tip it over. Because you have this stress accumulation. It's kind of creepy and it slowly builds up. But then you get to this critical stress. And tides are this regular rhythmic pulse of stress, though it's of a much, much, much lower magnitude. But still, when something's at the critical stress, that is then able to be tipped over by that critical magnitude. And so about 0.5% of all continental earthquakes are triggered by earth tides, the actual vertical displacement of the earth itself from the sun and the moon and other planets. So you can get that earth tide that can trigger that earthquake about 0.5 to 1% of the time. The same effect also occurs with ocean tides, and in coastal areas the effect is combined because you have earth tides affecting the oceanic lithosphere and also the water above it. And so we just had a full moon yesterday, and that's still very much active. We still have stronger tides right now because of the alignment of the sun, the earth, and the moon. So we have this alignment between our different neighbors in the solar system that create stronger tides. And some of the research also showed that the risk with big faults, like really strong faults at critical stresses, is that if you have these tides with their periodic stress, what they can do is that displacement can turn small fractures into big ruptures. And so they also noticed that the biggest earthquakes occur more often during tidal extrema, when you have the biggest swing in the displacement. And that's based on diurnal tidal rhythms, that's based on semi-diurnal rhythms, also like higher frequency ones like the tert diurnal and quart diurnal, and then you have monthly and annual tidal rhythms. All these combined together into a uniform wave, but it's the diurnal and semi-diurnal, the 24-hour and the 12-hour rhythms that have the greatest effect and make up the majority of the overall unified tidal rhythm. So they noticed that effect, and this is what I wanted to get to next. Let's type this in. Why have we been seeing so many earthquakes over the past month, irrespective of just, for example, the fact that solar activity has gone down a little bit? Well, we're going to look at planetary geometry. This is another influence over Earth geophysics. And if I zoom out, this is set for today, but you will notice with our planetary geometries here, I can actually make this look a little nicer for everybody, that we have some really significant planetary geometries that are just now kind of coming to a close. We have, first and foremost, we see here the Earth, we see the Sun, we see Jupiter. We had Jupiter opposition just back what was it, on the 7th or the 6th of December. And so we're only 10 days off of that Jupiter opposition. So we see that pretty clearly here. Let me zoom out so we can see Jupiter. There's Jupiter there. Pretty much still in a straight line. Jupiter, being the biggest planet in our solar system, has a significant gravity vector, can actually influence the position of the sun around the center of mass of our solar system. So don't discount Jupiter. Just coming off of that opposition. And then also check this out. We also have this alignment here between Mars, Earth, Venus, Ceres, and Pluto. And this is starting to break up now at this moment in time, though this Mars-Pluto opposition is becoming more exact. But the overall alignment, Venus and Ceres, are kind of drifting out of this alignment with Pluto. But that is also pretty much active at this moment in time, just now beginning to diminish, and has been active over the past 2 weeks. If we click back here, and I can actually zoom, if I click there, no, yeah. So if I go back to the 1st of December, we see here this planetary geometry forming. We have this opposition, like before the opposition goes exact with Jupiter and the Sun. And then we see our alignment there, Mars, Earth, Venus, Ceres, Pluto. And so this is before, and then going forward to today, the 16th, here it is now. But if I reset this, I can actually move the Earth around. And so we can see what this has been happening going back. Now we're in June. There's no real big planetary geometries here. I mean, I could zoom around and look a little bit more, but nothing significant. Not that, caught in those two lines, right? But if we go forward here, we can see all of a sudden this click into place. Here we get a Venus-Jupiter alignment right there. So let me zoom in a little bit for you all. There we get our Venus-Jupiter alignment. And then we do get this Mars-Venus alignment here. That's actually right now, the 17th. So if we go back a little bit, we just had that Mars-Venus opposition, but you can see how that planetary geometry formed kind of out of the blue. Like you don't expect it to happen, and then all of a sudden it clicks in. And so I think that is a big reason why we've had an increase in earthquakes. We've had multiple factors combined. We've had a reduction in solar activity after a big period of solar loading, sunspots over 200, really big geomagnetic storms. We had a big one in May. We had a G4 plus in October, right? Tons of solar flares. X flares that are, reaching 5, 7, 9 on the level, on the rating. And then right as that pulls back, and what the research shows is that when that pulls back is with earthquakes kind of spring to life, we then have planetary geometries which are conducive to creating stronger gravitational forces on the planet, therefore stronger vertical displacements because of tides, right? And then today, during the full moon, when we have the biggest tide, it's actually like king tides right now, boom, magnitude 7.3 in an area that has strong ocean tides because it's Vanuatu. So pretty compelling case I think I've just laid out there. If you track this stuff, you research into it, it's pretty amazing. And the science is coming around to prove it too. So that is the update for the earthquake. Jumped on this as soon as I could for you all. Let us do some questions now. If you have any questions, I will answer them. Please type at Stefan Burns. Keep them on topic, please, and we will do a short Q&A. And after that, it'll be time to sign off. But happy to be here for you to kind of drop everything to do this live stream. So again, at Stefan Burns to ask a question, and once they start coming in, I will begin answering them. I see that the chat's been very active. Thank you all so much for being here, for joining on the video. Please send your prayers to everyone in Vanuatu and that surrounding region. Send lots of love and light there. This event happened, so there's no preventing it now, but it doesn't mean that we can't energetically support everyone in that region, send them blessings, sending them love. I think that's a great thing that we could do. So make sure you do that if you have the energy and capability. So first question technically is from Anna saying, will you marry me? But the first question that's on topic is from Jason saying, do you think the stronger earthquakes will occur after winter solstice? Who knows? It depends again on some of these configurations. We do have some pretty strong planetary geometry coming up in 2025, but right now is definitely a kind of maximum period with this. So that's important. But the solstice shouldn't have any specific effect on earthquakes as far as I know. If gravity can keep our oceans in check, why does it not crush people? Well, gravity just helps things settle down, and we are used to the situations here on Earth, and we have a skeleton to help us resist the force of gravity. We're not mollusk. Will there be an earthquake on the north end of the Cascades? Who knows? We have had earthquakes along California and Alaska. And so this is kind of in between the two, but nothing yet has manifested in that region. And I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that earthquake here and earthquake there will trigger one there, or that there's this like kind of leapfrog effect. I know there are some earthquake forecasters that talk about that, but I haven't been convinced by the data yet. But there's the idea of like a standing wave, like in the crust and this slow propagation of energy. There is something to that, but it's kind of nuanced and too much to get into with this question right now. Another question, am I married? No, I am not. From Diane, what about the huge solar release yesterday? Thought it was on the backside. Yeah, we had another big eruption from the sun. It was from a sunspot group that's rotating in. Should be on the Earth-facing side in about 3.5 days. So I'll keep you up to date. If you like to stay praised, then you can subscribe if you are not already. That if it continues to be a strong solar flare producing sunspot, that could give us quite some rattles over the next few weeks. We'll just have to wait and see. Do we perpetuate the status quo or challenge it? Well, I'm going to say challenge it. That's what I would always go for. But unless it's a good status quo, right? If it's peaceful and loving and a lot of harmony, then that's great. Keep that. A lot of questions. Will this cause more earthquakes in the Pacific? I don't know, but it is a big one. One thing I can touch on, which will help kind of just enlighten the situation, is that not only does a fault have stress, right? And if it gets to a critical stress threshold, it can rupture, and not only do earth tides, have this periodic stress that's of lower magnitude, but still can be sufficient enough to trigger an earthquake, about 0.5 to 1% of the time. The stress that radiates out from an earthquake is also of a certain magnitude. And so there is an effect of really big earthquakes. That propagation of energy can also trigger other faults to rupture if they are at their critical stress. And so that effect is pretty quick because this energy has already been rippling out. The area, the earth will continue to ring from that earthquake for a while, especially if it's a big earthquake. That reverberation can continue for a long time, just the resonance of it, right? But that dynamic has been seen where there's a big earthquake and then an earthquake just nearby pops off because then it gets stressed over. And so there is this also accumulation phase. Like you could have, let's say this magnitude 7.3. Let's say there's a fault over here that is 2 months away from rupturing. This earthquake goes off. Now this guy gets loaded with all this additional stress, and now it's only 3 days away. So the effect may not be instantaneous, right? It doesn't have to be instantaneous, but its timeline to rupture has been shortened because it's now had a big dose of energy that it's effectively taken on. A lot more stress has been added to it, and now it's closer to rupture. And so that is different for everywhere. That's just one example. I gave a hypothetical, but you can kind of play at that in your mind. So more earthquakes in the Pacific, it's possible, but we just don't know when. How do you feel the major lunar standstill next year factor into tidal impacts on quake activity? I'm not sure what you mean by the lunar standstill, Astro Stephanie. The moon is always moving, new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. There's no real standstill of the moon. Will the tsunami affect Australia? I would have to check again. I just don't know yet. We weren't able to find any good information because the website was like tweaking out from the Bureau of Meteorology. No tsunami threat for Australia. And this latest bulletin was issued at 1:05 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th of December, 2024. So it looks like they've taken in the Vanuatu earthquake into account, and they don't see there being, we see our warning area there, our earthquake epicenter, but they're saying everything is all clear, no threat. So that is great news. There was a magnitude 3.3 earthquake in Ohio today. Well, you get fracking, you get induced earthquakes. 90% of earthquakes are tectonic in origin from plate tectonics, but you also have slow earthquakes, you have volcanic earthquakes, and you have induced earthquakes. Earthquakes that are induced by human activity like fracking. And so, there's quite a lot of fracking all throughout that area. And so a magnitude 3.3, that is probably an induced earthquake. So I hope that answers your question, Brandon and Mark and the whole running club. Hey man, nothing's happening here in New Zealand. Why are you covering this and making it out to be a big deal? I covered in the video how there was no current threat for New Zealand, but there are tsunami threats for other areas. So I'm not really sure where you're getting on, Chad. Has this got to do with the California quake 2 weeks ago on the opposite side of the plate? That is interesting. We can kind of zoom out, just check that out. Just an interesting thing to kind of play with. And it's really zoomed out now, but I don't think maybe I can zoom in a little bit more like this. Here we have Vanuatu. Here we have California. We had the two largest quakes in some time now, exactly on opposite sides of the Pacific. So just an interesting coincidence, you could say. Are we passing through the galactic sheet? That's too much of a topic to get into, but no. There's no evidence for that that I found. There are these local bubbles in interstellar space that have different plasma regimes in terms of density and their temperature, things of that nature, because they're made by different stars. A B-class star, for example, is going to pump out more ultraviolet radiation, X-ray radiation, and it will ionize its interstellar plasma to a greater degree. And so it'll create this little bubble, and then our star has its own local bubble, and then there's the bigger bubble around the entire interstellar cluster that's driven primarily from the ionizing radiation from just a few stars that are really powerful. But in terms of like a galactic current sheet, that's another one of these kind of made up things as far as I can tell. There's no evidence for that. Actually, right now we are in like this hollow void in our interstellar region in terms of plasma density. There's some different kind of waves that swept by, but we're in actually like this hollow tube. And so, yeah, it requires some research into it. Question from TropoCal. Just wondering if you'll come back on with more breaking news about the tsunamis. Well, based on everything we've seen, it does not seem that there are any tsunami threats for areas outside of Vanuatu and the surrounding islands. So Fiji and some of these other little islands here have some tsunami threats, though the wave height is low and not that high on the tide, right? Less than a meter. The biggest tsunami threats for Vanuatu, but according to all the official agencies, no tsunami threats for Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, west coast of the US, any of those places, which is great. And thank you, Jason, for the super thanks. That's awesome. I'm going up to see more of the comments here. There's quite a lot of questions. A lot of questions. I'm going to have to miss some of these, unfortunately. It's very active right now. Okay. Are you tracking earthquakes by using astrology? Yeah, planetary geometry, astrology, those are useful, but it's not a 100%. You see that, you get this. It's important to look at all these things to get a better sense of this. Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of expecting more earthquakes because of the planetary geometries, which we went over. And then because of the full moon, that increases the probability of a big earthquake. And then if I'd seen those pre-earthquake signals in the Schumann resonances yesterday, then I would definitely have been on the lookout for, okay, something big is going to come. But they were so faint, and I didn't check them this morning like I normally do. So I didn't see them until after the earthquake, because then I decided to check them. But when you get all these things lining up, that's when you should really kind of be thinking about the probability of that occurring somewhere on the globe. I live on the New Madrid Fault, which has a 2.6 quake recently. How's that landlocked fault affected by tides and the full moon, if at all? It'd be affected by earth tides. So ocean tide is not going to really penetrate that deep into the North American continent for the New Madrid Fault, but earth tides is a regular periodic displacement and stress on faults. And so it really depends on how high the stress is on that fault and whether that's an effect. But again, only 0.5% or so of continental earthquakes are triggered by earth tides. It's a very low number, but statistically significant based on the research. Am I concerned with geoengineering at all? To be honest, not really. I don't see too many effects of it. Are they doing it? Sure. But at this moment in time, I'm not too concerned about that, to be honest. I just don't really see it. I see a lot of people misidentifying just like plain contrails, not chemtrails. But chemtrails are a thing, right? I recognize that. Is this due to the Pacific and Australian plates? Yeah, we have the Australian plate here, and then we have the New Hebrides plate there. I think I'm pronouncing it right. New Hebrides plate here. It's a little microplate of the Pacific plate. They're smashing together right there. We see our direction arrow, right? And we see our subduction basin and trench right there. So that's what's occurring. This is reminding me of the Hunga volcanic eruption, January 15th, 2022. Can you look back at the similarities between the earthquakes that followed with the volcanic eruption? Brandon, I think that'd take a little bit too much time, but that is definitely something to do. It's similar in the fact that they're in the same location roughly, right? Here's Tonga, here's Vanuatu, and so they're nearby, but it's beyond the scope of this Q&A. Apologies, brother. What alignments indicate earthquakes in 2025? I think I closed that solar system scope. We can zoom to it really quick. It's a pretty significant alignment. Just have to find it. I think it was like in March. There's a big one in 2026. This is a really big alignment in 2026. We do have this one. That's right now. Zoom forward. Yeah, I think it's this guy. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. We do have this alignment right here, which looks pretty significant. You see Earth, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, Saturn, Neptune, and the inner planet, and also the moon. Specifically right here on the 28th of March, we also have the moon in this alignment there. So it's a new moon. So that's not something to ignore, nothing behind. But the end of March has some pretty significant planetary geometry. The inner planets are a big effector, like Venus in particular, and Mars and Jupiter are really important with these tides. Mercury, not so much. The Sun, of course. But that's what we have coming up in 2025. That was the biggest one I saw for planetary geometry. And then if we zoom forward to 2026, you'll see a really wild one pop up right here. This is January 2026, and this is the most significant planetary geometry I've seen, like both for the past and for the future time scale. We get these alignments to occur every now and then. We had an alignment like this during the Carrington event, 1859, big solar flare. We also see these planetary alignments also influence solar activity. But here we have Mars, Venus, Mercury pretty close by to this alignment, the Sun, Earth, and Jupiter. So you really can't get more significant than that, because those are everybody in a line, right? If it's Pluto, it's pretty far out there. It's a dwarf planet. If it's Neptune or Saturn, whatever. But Jupiter is really important to watch. And here we get this alignment not only with Venus and Jupiter, but Mars is also there adding its weight to Venus, and Mercury fairly close by too. So this is an alignment right here, January 2026, that I'm sure I'll be talking about a lot more on this channel. Nothing's guaranteed to happen with this, but it's a significant planetary geometry alignment. And we also see Pluto kind of off there at the corner. And at the same time, Neptune and Saturn there conjunct and forming this alignment with the Sun. Not with us, but with the Sun. So we also see this alignment here with Ceres and Eris, both dwarf planets. So yeah, some interesting stuff. I'm way behind the questions now, but let me get a few more. Some of them are repeats. Is there any length of time mentioned for the tsunami warnings? Only Vanuatu and the nearby islands right now have any tsunami threat. Australia, New Zealand have been cleared, in addition to Hawaii, America, Samoa, all those places, North America, they're all fine according to the most up-to-date information at this time. What is the instrument used to monitor Schumann waves, and what's used to monitor PC1 pulsations? You can use a T antenna that's quite long. You string it out and then you measure those electric signals that are captured by the antenna, or you can use a ball antenna, B-A-L-L, just like a sphere, a ball antenna. And for PC1 pulsations, those are a little bit more difficult. Typically, you'll measure and observe those with like a magnetic induction coil that's had copper turned like thousands and thousands of times, sufficient enough to capture those very slight electron oscillations from a PC 1 through 5 pulsation. Kind of some repeat questions. How many active erupting volcanoes are there right now? If you know, I do not know. I'd have to pull it up on my phone because I have an app there that tells me. I mean, there's something like the Earthquake Center, but I'm not sure exactly where that is. Maybe I saved it in here. We have volcano discovery here. And I'll just go to volcanoes. Yeah, here's our currently erupting volcano map for today. And so there you go. Quite a lot in Asia and the Ring of Fire. Oh God, maybe later. Yeah, some in Africa. We got up in Iceland, and then a lot down here with Central America and South America. And of course, we have, that should be Hawaii there, but maybe it's not erupting. Either way, yeah, that's not Hawaii. That's like near Tonga there. And so, yeah, this is what we have erupting right now. Also, Erebus down in Antarctica, I guess. There's an interactive map. Let's go to the interactive map. I'm not sure if it tells us how many. So yeah, you could go to volcanodiscovery.com to check this out yourself. Is the 12,000 year cycle as you pass through the galactic current sheet? I'm not going to address that question. It's off topic. Sorry. Okay. I'm way behind on the questions. So I'm going to be wrapping it up soon. Where should I go to be safest as the world seems to be getting more dangerous? I think you just have to follow your intuition for that. I've thought about a lot about like the safest places on the planet, and it's all just by chance. You could play a probability game, doesn't mean that you'll win, right? So I think being fluid and flexible with your location is important. It's one reason I have a job like with YouTube, because then I can just pack up and go if I need to. And then I could just take this green screen here, right? This is just a piece of green fabric that I bought in Slovakia. I love this thing, but I can travel with that. I have traveled with it. I can set my green screen using some command clips. Not everyone's a YouTuber, of course, but you know, have a flexibility to move if need be. That's gonna be really important. Like if I was in New Jersey right now, I would be out of there, because there's now talk about how some of these things are being cited. I think a lot of them are misidentifications, but regardless, there's talk about how some of these things that are being cited are actually like nuclear bomb sniffing drones, and that someone's planted a dirty bomb in New Jersey and they're trying to find it. Don't know. But if I was in New Jersey, I'd be out of there really quick. I mean, I wouldn't want to play that game of like, oh, it may not be true. We saw back with the pandemic that conspiracy theories were basically spoilers 6 months in advance. And so we pray to God that's not the case. But yeah, just have some flexibility with your location, I would say, is really important as things get more dynamic. We're entering into the age of air. And so this is only going to continue, it seems. Are we overdue for a super solar flare on the sun? I saw the news today when it will happen. Basically, someone just took the big And they weren't even super flares, actually. They misappropriated the term. Super flare has a specific energy range. The Carrington event was not from a super flare. So there's this research paper that came out that tracked the most recent super flares, basically just extremely strong solar flares. They weren't super flares. That's a specific term. But they tracked the most recent extremely strong solar flares, like from the Carrington event, also 1922. There's a few others. And they created a reoccurrence interval for them, just like they do with earthquakes. And according to that, we are overdue. But if you understand this stuff or read the paper and understand the nuance, there's probably no real rhyme or reason to these most powerful solar flares to occur on a certain time frame. Maybe, but I think it's too early to say that for sure. And probably a disservice, because most people aren't going to get that headline right and then think, oh my God, we're overdue for a super flare, when in fact, it's not a super flare. The last super flare that occurred was 774 and 775 AD. Those are known as Miyake events. They're 10 times stronger minimum than Carrington events. So are we overdue? I don't know. We're in a strong solar cycle right now, though, so it's possible. It's possible. Anything's always possible, but whether it's going to occur like tomorrow or 2025, anyone that's giving you exact dates is misleading you. And if they happen to be right, then well, they happen to be right. But it's likely just a chance thing with that. There's no way to really predict this stuff. And I've researched into this a lot. I researched into it with an open mind too. It's important. I'm liking this channel. I thought you were going to be one of those trolls, but you seem legit and enjoy what you do. Respect. Yeah. Well, thanks, Chad. Do you think the weakening Gulf Stream could cause more stress on Earth's plates? Okay, we can go to that. The AOMC is weakening. There's actually only one place on the planet right now that is cooling. That is off the coast of Greenland, because we are right now in a Heinrich event. What is a Heinrich event? This is one of the first videos I made on this channel. Unfortunately, it's still there. Just didn't get the reach that I would have liked it to have gotten. But a Heinrich event is when you have a whole bunch of icebergs and glaciers pour off and then melt into the ocean. That changes the salinity. And they find these Heinrich events on the ocean floor sediment because glaciers and icebergs and everything, they raft out the sediment that they churn up. It's ice rafted sediment that then deposits down. It's significantly different than normal ocean sediment. So when they do these drill holes, they can identify when we had Heinrich events. And basically they are connected to periods of greater climatic instability. They're connected to different glacial variations, ice age variations. Right now we are in one because the last big repository of ice in the Northern Hemisphere is Greenland. There used to be a lot more ice in the Northern Hemisphere. We had the Laurentide ice sheet. We had a big ice sheet over parts of Europe. Of course, there was more sea ice in general, but there's still a lot of snow and ice in Greenland. But that has been changing as the Arctic has been warming up twice as fast as the rest of the globe on average. A lot of that's pouring out. And so we are getting a lot of icebergs, and they're all basically melting here. And as a result, this part of the globe is actually cooling just a little bit, about 0.5 degrees Celsius. The rest of the world on average is heating up. But that is changing the salinity, because this is all fresh water, and the ocean, of course, is salt water. And when you change the salinity, you alter the currents that flow. So you have the Gulf Stream, but the Gulf Stream is just a small part of what's known as AOMC. And so it's this big current that flows all the way up like this and through Europe, and it's wild. And there's evidence that if that shuts down, what will happen is there will be global cooling everywhere except here. Basically, Central and Eastern Europe will have their temperatures maintained, but because of that, they're going to get crazy storms because of that new temperature differential. This is based on modeling, so it's not guaranteed to be accurate, but yeah, it's not good that the Gulf Stream, the AOMC are weakening. Now, it could cause more stress on Earth plates. That I don't think there's probably any research that's been done on that. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about, because waves and currents, they have these like acoustic gravity properties that influences basically the crust and faults and earthquakes. We know that they can have an effect on earthquakes, but it's so gradual. I'm not sure how that would manifest in terms of actual earthquake activity, or like on the plates. And does that influence plate tectonics? That's a really hard question to even try to answer on this live stream. So I know there's been a lot of questions I have not been able to answer, but I'm going to wrap up now. So thank you all so much for watching. Again, please say your prayers for everyone in Vanuatu who's been affected by this. A magnitude 7.3 is no joke, nothing to sneeze at. There has been some really strong shaking there. Some initial reports of building damage already. That tsunami threat has been issued. It's probably kind of already expired at this point, because by this point it's already swept over. Still a minor tsunami threat for these regions over here, but Australia is good, New Zealand's good, Hawaii's good, North America's good. Looks like most of Southeast Asia is good as well, so that is great. But say your prayers for everyone in Vanuatu. Happy to be here to do this live stream quickly, to explore all the different forces at play that led to this earthquake and some of the other kind of bigger theme pictures that are occurring at this time. I always like connecting with you guys live to answer your questions. It's always a good opportunity to kind of get into some of the weeds of these different themes that I can't really do on my more normal professionally produced videos. So if you like the channel, then please subscribe. I release videos almost daily. I actually just released another video like 2 hours before this, so you give that a watch. And if you want to make sure you get these live streams, then click that notification bell so you get that push notification. I don't really know how that works, but I know that's the thing that you can do. And so I do these randomly. I mean, sometimes I'll have a live stream scheduled, rarely. Usually though, it's like when something happens, I'm there. That's kind of my on-call duty to you all. So here to help support you with that, to understand these earth energies. Some people feel these really strongly, so it helps understand what they're feeling. And you can have health disturbances from these too. I've felt health disturbances from earthquakes before 2 times now. You have to kind of be close by for that to occur, but that's also an effect. So be healthy, be well. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. Sending you all lots of love and light. Sending lots of love and light to all the people in Vanuatu and the surrounding areas that have been affected. Mother Earth is changing, so we'll keep track of what's happening, and I'll be here helping you every step of the way.